Hello again, everybody. Sam Offord from Pop Instincts here on YouTube. And as you may be able to tell, I'm in the vault today. This is my record collection. I thought we'd take a look at a few. And why don't we start off with, how about we say, Kiss. I wanted to mix things up with the types of videos. We're kind of throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. The first video was kind of an introduction. Last video that I did, I was showing something that I was selling on eBay. And this time I thought I'd go through my record collection. I'm an avid record collector. You can see behind here, I have a little over 2,000 records that I've collected over about 30 years. I grew up in the period of records, but I was more of a cassette collector at the time. But I started buying records about 30 years ago regularly when I really got into music. And I've been doing it ever since then. So I've come across some very interesting records here and there, and I thought I'd share some of my collection with you. No, I'm not going to try to sell them to you. These are records that it's just part of my own personal collection. I thought we'd kind of talk about them a little bit. I do want to say today, if you can't already tell, we're going to be talking about Kiss, and we'll go through some of my Kiss records. I do want to say I wasn't born with this information, in my brain. I learned all this stuff through research, and through that I can share this with you. This is a favorite book of mine of Kiss. If you can catch it here on the camera, it's called Kiss Behind the Mask. And this was released, they started working on this years ago. And the first half of the book, it's in two parts. The first half of the book is the members of Kiss pretty much giving their opinions on these records, like I'm about to do. And the second half is like an autobiography. The autobiography first, and then they rate the record. So this is where a lot of, the information comes from, but it's a really cool book if you want to check it out. I'm sure you can order it on Amazon. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the records. And we're going to start from the very beginning. I got into Kiss around 1991. I was getting into music seriously around 1989. And I got into a lot of 60s and 70s music. And then that eventually was like, well, what else is there? And I got into hard rock. And Kiss was a band that I was interested in. They looked interesting. Of course, the kabuki makeup and breathing fire and everything like that. But by the time I got into them, they were already well into their non-makeup years. And they did a cover song for the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey soundtrack that was originally done by Argent. It was called God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and everything took off from there. So let's look at some of their records. We're going to start off first with the self-titled debut from 1974, Kiss on Casablanca Records. And as you see on the sticker on front, it's giving a list of the songs, and it says Kissin' Time is part of it. And there were contests that were being set up at that time. Kissing contest, as it were. Interesting thing about this record, however, it's a very early pressing, and I'll show you the label if you can catch that there. That's the official Casablanca Records label. Neil Bogart was the founder of Casablanca, which is probably why I used the name Casablanca. Anyway, it says the song Kissin' Time is a part of the package. It actually isn't. It was left off accidentally. It was, just one of those wild pressings. And they forgot to include the song, even though the sticker's right there on the record. When you come across something like this, it might be worth a little something. It's just kind of valuable. It's like just a little alternate version of what's out there. Of course, you miss out on the song Kissin' Time, which is a pretty cool song. This is almost regarded unanimously by all members of Kiss to be their finest effort. It was the very first album out of the gate. And many of these songs are still played in concert, well, when concerts get underway again, to this day. Deuce, Firehouse, Strutter, songs like that. Really incredible stuff. 100,000 Years. This is an excellent introduction to Kiss if you think you might somewhat be interested in them. Of course, today it's easier than ever to get into any kind of music because you can stream it. But records are available in stores, obviously, used record stores. I actually bought this from a coworker who, knew I was a Kiss fan and offered to sell me some records. And that's how I came across the one that was kind of rare. So, Kiss, 1974. Okay, the next Kiss album was also released in 1974 on Casablanca Records. It's entitled Hotter Than Hell. And this was their sophomore album, and like a lot, I'll go ahead and flip over the back of the cover. There's a pretty wild story behind the making of this album cover. The guys, with the exception of Gene, who to this day has never been drunk, and let me tell you something about that. That's something that really stuck with me with Kiss, particularly Gene Simmons. He once said in an interview that at that point he had never been drunk, never been high. And for a 16, 17-year-old person listening to this rock god, as it were, talk about that, it influenced me not to do it. You can say that's corny or whatever, but it's the truth. Anyway, the rest of the guys got a little sauced when they were doing this photo shoot. You can see some women in the background. But this was their second album on Casablanca Records, again, 1974, Hotter Than Hell. This album was kind of rushed. Kiss was trying their best to be, to be heard and be seen and make it, and they kind of rushed this album, and it was really underproduced. There's some great songs off of this record, like Hotter Than Hell, Watching You, Parasite, Going Blind is one of my favorites. I really like pretty much every song on this album. But the production quality isn't that hot. They just didn't have, it was kind of, like I said, a rush deal so they could get back out on the road and try to make it. Hotter Than Hell. Next record we have is one of the most important ones in my life. It was my first Kiss, as a matter of fact. This is Dressed to Kill. This came out in 1975, again on the Casablanca record label. You see the front and back of the album. The back is a negative of the front. This album's well worn when I bought it. At the time, I bought this at a flea market for 50 cents. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Kiss except for the makeup. And they had a song that I really liked called Rock and Roll All Night. Truth be told, if that song wasn't on this record, I may not have picked it up. But I thought, hey, I do kind of like that song. Let's pick it up. And I was compelled to listen to the entire record instead of just listening to Rock and Roll All Night itself. And blew me away. This is my all-time favorite Kiss record. It starts off with Room Service, a lot of classics that sometimes get played and sometimes don't. But, oh man, Love Her All I Can, Ladies in Waiting, Getaway, Two-Timer. Really, really great stuff. This album isn't about 30 minutes long. They kind of get to the point, and they do it well. And this is another, I drew some inspiration. Again, you can say this is cheesy if you want, but I had to do senior pictures in my senior year of high school at studio, and you had to dress up for one shot, and you could wear a shirt, whatever you wanted in another shot. And I chose to wear a Kiss shirt. But when I had to dress up, I was really upset. I thought, this is corny. Who wants to be wearing a suit? That's not what rock stars do, and all that. But I thought, honest to God, I thought, well, if Kiss can do it for an album cover, I can do it. So I did it, and that's what got me through my senior pictures. So this is Kiss, Dressed to Kill. This next record is also from 1975, and this is the album that broke the band through. This is Kiss Alive. This is the back of the album cover, and this is their first gatefold album, which I'll try to open that up for you there. And you can see letters written to fans from the band itself, and that's something that they kept doing throughout their career. But this was an album that we find out years later, with a name like Alive, you say, oh, that's them live in concert. The record label was like, hey, things are going rough, we're not making a lot of money, Casablanca might go under, but what do we do? And they felt that after 3 albums, they never really captured their sound. They said, our sound is like what we're like live. So they're like, okay, let's do a live album. And they do songs from the first 3 records on here, and it exploded. This is the record that saved Kiss. This is the record that saved Casablanca. And this kind of ushered in that period of 70s live albums. A little later came Frampton Comes Alive, a lot of famous live albums, which is ironic because Kiss wasn't selling a lot of records by that point anyway. So why would you go out and buy a live album? Well, the stars were all aligned and it took off. They had a hit off this album with Rock and Roll All Night, the live version. I didn't mention, but on the previous record, Dressed to Kill, that song was on there, and it was suggested that they write an anthem that tells the people what Kiss is all about. And they came up with Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, and still they're most famous to this day. The next album is a benchmark in their production and where Kiss was at the time, and this was the album that had to happen. It needed to happen. Kiss could rest on their laurels and do another album like they had already made 3 records, but they wanted to do something different with this. This is the back of the album. This is kind of a post-apocalyptic type of scene that we have going on here. This record, if you pull it out, you will see the lyrics, some of the lyrics to Detroit Rock City, which is on this record. And on this side, you see an advertisement for the Kiss Army. And the Kiss Army was actually founded in Indiana by a fan, and they are still known, Kiss fans are still known as the Kiss Army to this day. A little note about this one, if you remember the old Casablanca record label that I had showed you, this is a little different. And this label you can see in the background. You see it looks like, you have some sheiks and some camels and things like that. And Casablanca was now Casablanca Record and Film Works. And now this was a re-release because the first album sold so many copies. They came out with a second a reissue of the record, and that's why you have the different label. And that's how you can tell the difference between the first pressing and the subsequent pressings. Record pressings are kind of like books. The more successful it is, the more copies they sell, the more copies they have to make, making the original worth more money. Kiss, for the first time, did they just changed everything up on this record. Great Expectations, for example. They brought in a children's choir to sing on that song. That was something you never would have thought Kiss would have done before. They also had their first ballad with a song that was co-written by Peter Criss called Beth. And the stories have varied over the years that Peter wrote this song about his girlfriend, his wife Lydia, which wasn't necessarily true. Stan Pendridge, who was in a band called Chelsea with Peter before he joined Kiss, he actually had a girlfriend that they called Beck, or Becky, Beck for short. And the song was originally called Beck. And when Gene or Paul asked Peter, he said, Beck, who's that about, Jeff Beck? He was like, no, it's about... So they changed the name to Beth, and it's about being on the road and being away from a loved one, for a long time and promising to come home soon. This also had huge songs like God of Thunder and Shout It Out Loud and Do You Love Me? This was Kiss 1976 with Destroyer. Move on to our next record. This is also came out in 1976. Kiss were really putting out records at this point. I mean, they were just, 2 a year. It wasn't unheard of. It's kind of like Elton John. He was just putting out records every time you turned around. Kiss, the same thing. This is Rock and Roll Over, and this was an album they're kind of getting back to where they were before. It's more of a rock and roll album. You have a ballad type song like Hard Luck Woman by Peter Criss on this record, and that song was originally written by Paul Stanley with Rod Stewart in mind. Sometimes you write songs and you're like, man, I bet so-and-so could sing this song. And he was going to give it to Rod Stewart, and Peter Criss stopped and he said, hey, what about me? I've kind of got a Rod Stewart voice, let me do it. And they did, and it was another hit for the band. As I said, this was more in a rock, more of just a straight-ahead rock and roll album than even Destroyer was. You had Makin' Love, which was very much influenced by Led Zeppelin. You had Mr. Speed, which is an audience favorite. It's a song that Kiss, aside from the Kiss Cruise, I don't think they've ever performed the song live, and it's something that I think, yes, most hardcore Kiss fans, that's the song that they want to hear live. So maybe someday. Love 'Em, Leave 'Em. They did promo videos on this album as well for the first time, and it's another incredible record. By the way, all these records I do love. I'm not just giving reviews here. I mean, I genuinely do love them. Love Gun is next. This was one of the first Kiss albums I actually purchased. I go to a record store. I live in Kentucky, and there was a record store at the time was known as Pack Rats, which is now the Great Escape. And this has been one of my best friends in the world. We actually, I with some friends actually skipped school on prom day, and it's also known as senior skip day. Well, me and most of the other guys didn't have girlfriends. We weren't shopping for tuxes and all that kind of stuff. We were buying records, and that's exactly what we did. And this is Love Gun, 1977. Also, the Casablanca record. You see the Kiss logo in, I believe, candle wax, as it were. This Kiss was so huge at this point. You had songs that, again, still are in the song list, the set list in concert to this day. Love Gun. Shock Me was a very interesting song. This was inspired by a real-life situation where Ace Fraley, the guitarist for the group, actually was shocked at a concert. He had touched the railing, and he was electrocuted, and it took him out of the show for a little bit, and they wound up coming back and doing it. And he wrote a song about it. Ace was also very shy. So much so, this was the first time on any Kiss album that Ace actually performed and sang, I should say. He always played guitar. But he had them turn off all the studio lights, and he would lay down on the floor, and he would record it like that. He didn't want to be seen. He was just real self-conscious about that. But it absolutely worked, and then that's probably what led to his solo album, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Next, we have Kiss Alive 2. If Alive 1 worked well, why not Part 2? And that's exactly what they did. 1977, still huge. This was their second album for Casablanca in 1977. As you see the back, some great live shots of the band in concert. And the inside, even more great live shots as you see what the Kiss stage show looked like at that time. This album originally came with, I don't have them, they originally came with some tattoos, some of those temporary tattoos. This did not come with this record. However, I do have, and I do like when they put a little, put the record in something besides a white sleeve. You get to see the fans, and the fans enjoying a Kiss concert. The side I just showed you showed all the other Kiss albums you could go out and buy. Maybe this was a fan's first record, and they had no idea that they had all of these that they could also go out and purchase via Casablanca Records. You also had the Evolution of Kiss was a booklet that came with this record set, and it kind of gave just a brief history. The band had been around 3-4 years at the time, and you can see a visual evolution of the members of the band. This is well worn, by the way, so we won't go through all of the pictures, but part of this album was actually, the first 3 sides were live, and you had songs that didn't appear on Kiss Alive. You had some of their other greatest hits, like Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World, Love Gun, Tomorrow and Tonight. And what's interesting about a couple of those songs, Hard Luck Woman, for example, was filmed or recorded during Kiss rehearsals. They didn't perform the song live, but they took that rehearsal, added in some fan noise, and boom, you had a live song. Studio creation, yeah, but hey, we were glad to have it on the record. The very last side, they didn't have enough new material that they wanted to put to make a 2-record set, so they had 3 sides live, and the other songs on the album, 5, including a cover of the Dave Clark Five's Any Way You Want It, were studio creations, and that was to round out the album. So it's another album that I really enjoy. I think of it as, it's kind of a live album, but when you throw in 5 extra studio tracks, that's nice to look at as a bonus. Moving on to 1978, a really incredible year for Kiss. I'm not sure how this is going to pick up on the camera with a Mylar cover like this. You kind of get your reflection in it. And this was double platinum. This was my first greatest hits compilation. I bought this on cassette, as a matter of fact, years ago. And if you look on the inside, you can see the indentation of each member of Kiss. And this was issued with a platinum award. It's just a little piece of cardboard with a picture of a Platinum Kiss Award, and you could write your name on it, because This was kind of their gift to you, saying, hey, you're the ones that purchased all these records and allowed us to go double platinum, and that's what they put out. They had a couple of remixes on this album. My first exposure to the song Strutter, for example, was from this record. It was a little disco-y. It was called Strutter 78. It kicked off the record. Some fans loved it. Some fans said, hey, what was wrong with the original? Why are you messing with it? You know, and things like that. But being a fan after the fact and listening to it first, I didn't have any problems with it, whereas a longtime fan did. And that's kind of the difference when you get into a band after the fact. It doesn't mean that the longtime fan's opinion is any more valid than mine, just because they listened to them a few years before I did. I just have a different reaction when I hear some of the songs in the different eras of Kiss. As I said, there were some minor changes on some of the other songs on the album, but still a very, very strong compilation. I'd highly recommend this if you were just getting into Kiss. The only thing at this time, and this probably started the tradition of always leaving off that one song that should have been on there, no Shout It Out Loud on this record. That's Kiss Double Platinum. Continuing in the year 1978, I'm going to bring out all four of these albums at one time. We had the four solo albums from each member of the band. As we see here, we have Gene Simmons, and I'll get to the others in just a moment. We'll just start with Gene. 1978, not only did you have Kiss going double platinum, you had the Kiss television special called Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, and Kiss were just everywhere, and it was almost getting to be too big. So big, as a matter of fact, that Ace Fraley and Peter Criss, guitarist and drummer for the band, during a break on the set of I believe it was filming Kiss Meets the Phantom, said, we're going to go solo. You know, we just feel like we believe in our material enough. We're not getting enough songs on the album. It's mainly Gene and Paul doing all the songs. We believe in what we're doing, so we're going to go solo. And Gene and Paul have expressed in interviews, they told him, they said, tell you what, why don't you don't leave the band? That would be silly. Why don't you put out solo albums and be in the band? As a matter of fact, we'll all put out solo albums. And that's what they did, 1978. This is Gene Simmons. This particular record, he had a lot of different guests. Jeff Baxter from the Doobie Brothers played on this record. You had Katie Segal from Married with Children. She actually did background vocals on this record. She worked with a lot of people, as a matter of fact, before she became an actress. Janice Ian was on this record, and she, in that book that I was just telling you about earlier in the video, she met Gene when she was walking into her apartment. He was there in the hallway, and he said, "Hi, Janice, I'm Gene." And she's like, "Okay, Gene who?" Well, he didn't have the makeup on, and she's, "Oh, okay, Gene Simmons." Anyway, he asked her to be on the album, and she did some incredible work on the song Radioactive, and Gene actually gave her a record award for sales of the album. He said, "Well, you were part of this album." Helen Reddy was on this album, Joe Perry from Aerosmith, so many others. He wanted to get Lassie on here. Gene said years later, he said, "I had big plans. I just wanted to get as many stars on here as I could." Another song on this record, When You Wish Upon a Star, is, yes, the song from the Disney song. You know, Jiminy Cricket sings this. This is real touching to listen to this song, I kid you not, because Gene is singing it in the studio, and he wanted to do this song because Gene is from Israel. He came over here to America. He didn't know how to speak English. He came over here as a child, and one of the first movies he remembers seeing was Pinocchio. And Jiminy Cricket sings that song. I'm getting a chill relaying this story here. You can hear Gene kind of cracking, his voice is cracking. He's almost crying when he's singing the song in the studio because it meant that much to him. You know, him as a small child and dreaming, and that never goes away. Paul Stanley also released a solo album, and his was probably, out of all the albums, the most in the vein of Kiss. He didn't have a lot of guest stars. He didn't go, and I can't fault him for it. He kind of played it by, this is a Kiss album. These are, if I had the album to do all by myself, these are the songs that I would do, and they sounded the most Kiss-like. He had My favorite from the record is Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me When We're Apart. That was a ballad that he did. Really beautiful song, and it didn't get a lot of airplay. A lot of the songs from these albums didn't get airplay. As a matter of fact, this is the point where Kiss was getting too big. These albums were shipped platinum, meaning that they shipped 1 million copies of Gene's, Paul's, Ace's, and Peter's. And that's 4 million records. Not everybody bought them, and they were discounted or sent back to the record label, and that made Kiss look like they couldn't sell records. Well, they could sell records, just not 4 million at a hit. So that was a problem. It should have been 1 million of all of them combined, and then they would have had repressings. Ace Fraley. Ace Fraley is roundly recognized as the most popular and best-selling of the solo albums. As a matter of fact, Kiss themselves, pretty much, with the exception of Peter Criss, said this was the best solo album. They said Ace got it. He understood. He didn't make it sound like a Kiss record. He didn't go all out as Gene did, but he kept it simple, stupid, as sometimes they Kiss themselves will say that's what it stands for. Keep it simple, stupid. A lot of great hits on this album, including New York Groove, which was a song that was originally done by a group called Hello. And Ace covered it, and he is most credited with that song. Some of these songs from these solo albums appeared on their Dynasty tour in 1979, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And Peter Criss, drummer for Kiss, has his first solo album, and this, actually, I think I'll show you the inside of this. I don't think I have any posters. So we have here, that's all 4 solo albums that you can see, and you can figure out, oh, there's more than one. They all have 4 albums, and I thought I'd show this to you. It is a merchandise book that comes, sometimes if you're lucky enough to find a record where they have the little merchandise sheet still intact. You could join the Kiss Army for $5 a year, and check out the prices on t-shirts. You could get t-shirts for $5, and again, this is 1978, and you could just go ahead and mail that in, but this individual decided to go ahead and keep that, and it's a bit of a souvenir for Kiss fans to get. All right, before we move on to Dynasty, I want to mention that one of the other things that Kiss was doing around 1977, 1978 made them so huge. You had merchandise, you had the lunch boxes, you had Kiss appearing in Marvel Comics and things like that. And again, that's when things seemed to be getting a little too big. Also, this is an album that has a different label. This is still through Casablanca Records. This is the inside of Dynasty. And I really like the record in here because if you look, you can see the group. They're all just posing on the inside. They're all wearing, looks like black turtlenecks. And this is the album, Dynasty, or as they say in Australia, Dynasty. That's how they pronounce it. And this is what some people refer to as Kissco. Because disco was really big in 1979, and Kiss kind of jumped on the wagon. Paul Stanley would go to discotheques, and he would hear these songs that were massive hits, and he thought to himself, gee, I could write this in my sleep. It's going to be easy to have a hit like this. And they did. Songs like I Was Made for Lovin' You, for example, or Sure Know Something. The fans, the longtime fans at this point were like, okay, you're getting a little too far off. You're missing the mark here. What are you doing dance music, Kiss? We want rock and roll. And they kind of alienated some of their earlier fans. Kids at the time loved it. You saw 10-year-olds at concerts, and they were wearing the makeup, and maybe they didn't care so much about the music. They just wanted to see fire breathing and just see these wild, outlandish costumes. Things were really going off the rails here because this was at the time Kiss was talking about developing a theme park called Kiss World, I believe they were going to call it. And there's nothing wrong with having big dreams, but it's hard to do that and still be a rock and roll band and still go out on the road and tour and such like that. Also, Casablanca Records wasn't doing so hot, or would soon start falling apart. There's a great cover song on this album that Ace Fraley does called 2000 Man that was originally a hit, or a song. It wasn't a hit, but it was a song by the Rolling Stones, and that turned out to be a favorite. So a lot of fans look back at this now, especially fans that came came on board after the fact, and thought, yeah, this is a pretty good record. I like it. It is something different. If you are only want to listen to one kind of Kiss, the first album might be your bag, but as you got to develop, you got to grow, and that's what Kiss did with Dynasty. Moving on, Kiss goes in a more pop direction with this album called Unmasked. It's an ironic title. You might notice that the cover is kind of slick, and that's because I actually picked this up at a Kiss convention. This is from Australia, I do believe. The jacket's a little smoother. I'm proud to have a copy from Australia because that's where this album was the biggest hit. America, they said, this is too pop. You thought you went too far with Dynasty. You've really done it this time, guys. This, along with Dynasty, I should mention, Peter Criss did not play on the album. Dynasty, he did do vocals for the song Dirty Livin', but on this album, even though he is credited for doing drums, the guys switched up instruments. Paul would play bass on some songs, and Gene would play, guitar or whatever. And actually, believe it or not, Anton Fig from Late Night with David Letterman, the world's most dangerous band, did most of the drumming on this record. So that's a little bit of trivia for you if you didn't know. The title itself, Unmasked, is a bit deceptive because Kiss did not take off their makeup on this record. This was released through Casablanca Records, and as I said, by this point, Casablanca was mainly, you had Kiss, but you also had a lot of disco artists, and as the 80s were coming around, disco was not so popular anymore. If you check out the Pop Instincts blog at popinstincts.com, I talk about Disco Demolition Night, which might have had a little something to do with this, but you can check that out on the site. This is an album I really love. It is pop, but it's melodic, and I like that. I like something you can hum to, as it were. Peter Criss did appear in the video for Shandy, and this was the last thing that he ever did with Kiss. He filmed the video. He put his regular street clothes back on, walked out, and they didn't really have much to do with each other again until 1995. Moving along, we come to 1981, where Kiss is officially under the Polygram label. At this point, well, they're still kind of under Casablanca, but this was the first album with their new drummer, Eric Carr. Eric Carr picked a heck of a time to come into Kiss. He had actually joined them on their Australian tour when they were promoting Unmasked, and this is the first album that he actually performed on. And this was the critics' darling, The Elder. Kiss by this point was, they were trying to get a little respect from the critics. Rolling Stone magazine, for example, never really appreciated them, and they thought they were just loud rock and didn't give them really the time of day. They were kind of indignant towards them, and Kiss started thinking more about, pleasing them. They changed their appearance. You don't see them on this album cover at all. I believe that is supposed to be Paul Stanley's hand. That's about all you see of the band on the record. But they went for this new wave, new kind of, they had shorter haircuts and they modified their outfits, and it just didn't really work. It was kind of a makeover. They still had on the makeup and everything, but it just didn't really, for me personally, it didn't really sit well with me. It didn't for a lot of other fans. It didn't for Ace Fraley. He was very upset with his album, didn't like it. It had some interesting songs on there, and they grew as a band. Whether you like the record or not, they were trying something different. And they had different songs like Just a Boy and World Without Heroes, which was a really good song featuring Gene Simmons. And probably the most Kiss-like song on the record, which was the anthem known as I, the letter I Believe in Me. And another one of those types of songs that kind of, inspired me listening to it, and they're talking about, I love anthems, and whenever you're talking about something positive like believing in yourself, it's really important, and you take it to heart sometimes. So an interesting record, to say the least, we will say. Kiss and music from The Elder. Their next album, part of the discography, this was an album that actually featured, it was a compilation album of some of their old songs and 4 new songs. This is called Kiss Killers. This particular album came from Germany, as a matter of fact. And Kiss was kind of letting their hair down, as you can see on the cover, and they're kind of getting back. They get to their rock roots. Now, it doesn't sound anything like their stuff from the 70s, but they're starting to head back in that direction. They had 4 new songs on this record: I'm a Legend Tonight, Down on Your Knees, Nowhere to Run, and Partners in Crime, along with some of their more well-known hits from other albums. This was produced by Michael James Jackson, not the artist of the same name, and this actually came out in 1982 and was a precursor to this. Our final record in this video, in the makeup years of Kiss, is Creatures of the Night, and this was Kiss really getting back to where it was all about for them. You see the cover and you see the almost glowing faces of Kiss, Creatures of the Night. This is one of my favorite album covers. And this is not an original pressing of the album, but I was able to snag this, and it's really cool because it is a picture disc. And let me get the record out of here for you. I bought this in early 2000s, I believe. And you see the album cover right there with Ace, Eric, Gene, and Paul. And they actually put out a video on MTV, and it was called I Love It Loud. And it was, like I said, it's a much harder sound and really what the fans were wanting. Unfortunately, they didn't have their casual fans anymore. And casual fans are the ones that are buying the tickets and such more than anybody else. The hardcore fans will take you so far, and then the casual fans, they kind of dropped out at that point. They had newer bands to choose from. They had like Van Halen at that time and such, and Kiss was seen kind of as old hat. This was also the last album to feature Ace Fraley, and he didn't play on a lot of this album. They had other guys play on the album, like Bob Kulick and others, and because Ace wouldn't show up to the studio. He kind of he social distanced himself from the band at this point, and he was torn up on all kinds of stuff, and he just kind of stayed at home, and his heart wasn't in the band anymore since Peter Criss, the band member he was closest with, left the group. Ace was kind of the odd man out, and Eric was the new guy, so when it came down to voting on anything democratically, Gene and Paul, they pretty much ruled, and they did from that point on, and we'll talk more about that in the next video. Neil Bogart had passed, the founder of Casablanca Records had passed. They dedicate this album to him, and this was their first album officially under Polygram Records. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video as we looked at the makeup years of Kiss. It was just me going through my record collection, and coming up in a future video we will take a look at the non-makeup years of Kiss, starting with Lick It Up. I'm Sam Alford. Thank you for watching, taking the time out of your day to watch this. Hope you might have learned something or enjoyed something. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel. Share the video. I can't tell you how much word of mouth does when somebody says, hey, I think you might get a kick out of this. It means everything. Also, check out popinstincts.com for my blog. You can check out a lot of stories similar to stuff like this. I just go into detail talking about everything from Dick Clark to Disco Demolition Night. Also, there's Pop Instincts on Instagram. There's Pop Instincts on Facebook. And there's also the Pop Instincts eBay store, which kind of started this all out. So until next time, I'm Sam Alford, and thank you for watching.